Well, guys, hi, and a very, very good afternoon. My name's Jonathan Finch. I lead the sales team over at Sales Geek. I don't know about you guys, but it is an absolutely miserable day up in Lancashire. The date today is the 15th of September. No, I had to think about that. October now. Got that wrong already. I'm absolutely delighted, guys, today to be joined by Graham Ablett. Graham, do you just want to give everyone a little bit of an overview as to who you are and what you do within the sales industry at the moment?
Yeah, I would love to. Great to be here, Jonathan. Thanks for inviting me along. So, yeah, I work for a company called Strategic Proposals. What do we do, I wonder, for a living? We help people to write proposals a little bit more strategically, perhaps, than the way they used to do it before. So we work with a lot of salespeople and BD people and account managers to try and help them to win business when it comes to writing the proposal. Think of it in terms of kind of the formal stuff, tenders and RFPs and all that kind of stuff, but also sometimes more proactively. So when somebody's having a great chat with a prospect and everything's going well, and then the devils go and ask, can you send me a proposal on that? And then it becomes like, oh my gosh, I've got to do a proposal. So we kind of do all of that sort of stuff. And then for some really, really strange reason, I kind of fell into it and have been doing it virtually all of my professional career. And even more bizarrely, actually really enjoy doing it. So it's kind of what we do. And yeah, my company now kind of focuses on that, training people to do it better or helping them on deals to win that specific deal, all kinds of stuff. We're kind of like proposal geeks.
Proposal geeks, I like that. Got JV there sometime, definitely. I like that. I very much like that. I mean, one thing I was going to ask you, how did you get into this? Because I mean, most salespeople, I'm guessing when they start in their career, wouldn't normally say, I'm going to end up running a business that helps other people do a very specific but very important part of the sales process. Take us back a little bit in your career. How did you get to here?
Yeah, most people who specialize like this end up falling into it. I'm an engineer, I guess, by my sort of qualifications. I studied as an engineer, and my first job was in a utilities company, working as a project engineer. So there was the engineering bit. I didn't really understand what I was getting into, but before I knew it, I was scouring OJU notices and putting PQQs together and RFIs and tenders. And so I just kind of fell into it, to be honest, like most people who get into it, and then have just really enjoyed it. I'm a competitive person. I really like my sport, doing sport and watching sport. So I kind of love that aspect of it. I like winning, and I guess it's all about winning, isn't it? So that helps. Hate losing. Actually, I kind of worked that out in my career. The feeling of winning is kind of like, expected that we'd worked really hard, we did really well, so expected to win that. So well done, but that should be the normal. Lose something, and the toys go out the pram. You live it, aren't you? That emotion is stronger for me. So I kind of think that's kept me in it, got me into it, and then kept me interested for over 20 years now. So.
I always think that phrase, it's not the winning, it's the taking part, is relevant in many primary schools and secondary schools across the UK, but potentially not if you want to get into sales. First place is first and second place is last, unfortunately.
Everybody gets a medal, don't they, at the moment?
Of course, everybody gets a medal. We won't get into that. There's a whole debate we could be having there. Won't go down that avenue. And I mean, from a proposal perspective, I mean, we work with a lot of different businesses all across the UK, and I think proposals is often part of the sales process that, from a training perspective, sometimes gets missed out. For me, is probably one of the most important part of the process, because until you've actually put that thing in front of someone that's got your facts, your figures, what you're going to do for them, how it's going to work. For any new people that are potentially listening to this, I mean, we get a lot of sales executives listening to the podcast and people who are quite new to the industry. What would your top 3 tips be for someone that was putting a proposal together, and what elements they should look at? You'd probably come up with a list of 20, but I'll stick to 3 if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. My first tip for anybody writing a proposal is to make sure you're focused on the customer, which is blindingly obvious. But a lot of people writing a proposal end up, maybe taking some boilerplate from their website or something that one of their colleagues has written before, or from some other internal document. And of course, all of that stuff is just talking about what and how you do something.
Yeah.
Which is probably what the customer understands already. And that's what's got you to the point where you're having a discussion from them. When you've got to do the proposal, you've got to write it in terms of what you're going to do for them and explain how it's going to benefit them, rather than just these kind of, I call it the me proposal, because it's just talking about you, and that's boring, right? A conversation where somebody's just talking about themselves is really, really dull and boring. So number one thing would be put yourself in the shoes of the customer, show you understand what it is that they're looking for and they need, then explain that, then tell the story. So once you've shown you understand what the customer needs and wants and where they want to get to, then you tell them this is how we're going to help you to get there. Is important. That's the what you're going to do. And then unfortunately in sales, that they could well be talking to other people or have the do nothing answer. So you also need to come up with the part of the story, which is why you're better placed than anybody else to deliver whatever it is you're delivering, and trying to then boil that. So there's customer focus, telling the story, and then probably having the 3 or 4 key points that differentiate what you're doing from what you think anybody else could be offering there. And that's 3 very concise points that hopefully when they read your proposal, which hopefully isn't War and Peace, it's a very very concise and to the point. When they finish reading it, if somebody said, Jonathan, what was Graham's proposal all about? You could say, well, it was brilliant because he's going to show us how we're going to reduce some money, get more efficient with this, and they're going to give us a unique tool that nobody else has got. That's what we're going to do.
I love the telling the story piece in that. I mean, one thing that I think we miss out on a lot in sales pitches and a lot when we're speaking to clients, but is that use of stories all the way through and making it memorable. And I suppose really, really good tip there, putting a story in as part of your proposal and making sure that they know the journey that they're going to go on. But also any stories that you've got, any case studies that you may have used with anybody else, so that people love learning about what you've done for other people, but it also makes it memorable for when that person sat in the boardroom going to their MD, can we sign this off? And they go, well, why should we? Well, they talked to me about this organization that they worked with before. Really easy to recite, really, really easy to recite. I mean, for me, the way that proposals have been presented, I mean, when I very first started in B2B sales, when we said we were going to send a proposal to the client, we were selling conference and exhibition stands. But if I sent anything longer than a paragraph over on that email, I used to get absolutely shocked, because it was, you should be selling, you need to be talking to people on the phone. If you're sending too much information for them to have a look at, you've obviously not sold it very well. And proposal for me now have changed massively. I mean, going from that one paragraph that we used to send over, which would give all the information of what they were going to get on the stand. Now, I mean, we use a proposal system online, which is a great way of us getting our message out there in a lot of different forms, but also a lot of tools that we can use with that as well. I mean, how do you think proposals have changed over the last few years?
You're right. They have changed a lot. Back, if you went back kind of 20 years, when a lot of buying was done by the person who was actually going to use the product or service being that they wanted, when the relationship was between buyer and seller, and that might have been when, it could have been done over a conversation, closed off with an email or a fax or something, perhaps ages ago. But then that's changed, right? Because then the sort of rise of purchasing and procurement departments has kind of formalized processes and has added a level of and there's lots of arguments sort of for and against this, but added some process to it, to try and get transparency and level playing field and competitive, a good level of competitiveness on these things, so that they've become huge. And then more recently, I think procurement people have got more and more fed up of reading reams and reams and reams and reams of material, because they sometimes ask lots of open-ended questions, which, if you're not sure how to answer it, or you're using the previous one written by one of your colleagues, you kind of add to it and add to it and add to it, and suddenly you've got, tell me about your quality management system, and
Yep.
we've got 18 pages of stuff on that. So let's chuck all of that in. So procurement people have then gone, right, we're not having that anymore. You've got to tell me about your quality management system in 2 pages or in 2,000 characters or whatever. So it's gone kind of, as you were saying, kind of the shorter proposal into these big, massive tender responses. And at the moment, and sometimes by using some sometimes really difficult to use procurement portals and tools, or Excel. I mean, what a wonderful way to ask for a proposal in Excel. But they've become more concise, which poses the challenge, right? Because it becomes, if you've got 18 pages of stuff to answer a question, to get that down to 2,000 characters, that actually is quite hard. That takes quite a bit of effort, which I'm not sure the procurement people necessarily understand sometimes. Particularly when they've typically condensed down the time people have got to respond to RFPs and invitations to tender. So it's a moving and evolving thing. And then the latest technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like this are going to bring, I think, new levels of automation. Procurement will become more and more automated. I can imagine people selling products in the very near future. The computers will be telling you that the price for chairs has just dropped by 10% because of something that's just happened in the other side of the world, and now you should be going to market to buy your chairs rather than when the contract comes up in another 18 months. So that could completely change the way things are being bought and purchased around the world, and things need to become faster. So as you said, you've got tools and things like that to help you generate proposals. There'll be some automation that comes into all of that to make the tick box and the checklist and the standard stuff just be probably done by computers. So that's going to come in.
And I think one of the biggest advantages we've found to having an interactive proposal system is due to the fact that we might have 4 or 5 decision makers involved in that process, sometimes less, sometimes more. But it does give you the opportunity to put a lot more information in there that not everybody will necessarily need to read. And I loved when you were talking before about the I, we, and me exercise. And we've done this before when we've run through people's proposals, even sales messaging. You look at LinkedIn at the moment and the outreach that people are doing. Hi, I'm such a body. We do this. If you'd like to book a meeting in with me, and you look at them and you're going, you haven't mentioned anything about our organization. There's no personalization on there. It's just very much I, we, me. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And I love when you were talking about the order of it, because I think we often find that the bit at the end, which is about how you're going to help the client, is right at the very end, just before you've put the cost in, rather than on the front page of that. And how do you go about working out with an organization how they're going to piece that together and what order they're going to put things in?
Well, the order you put it in is key. And the first thing you need to do is grab the attention. I mean, people's attention spans are getting less and less and less, aren't they? When you think how you sort of consume information, you just imagine, I'm kind of older than you. So, when you used to have a limited number of TV channels to watch, you weren't so picky when you were flicking through all the channels. Now you can watch anything you want when you want it, right? So we're used to getting what we want straight away. So if you start your proposal by talking about your company history, because you think that's really interesting to show how long you've been in the market and get that sort of a message across, guess what? The buyer probably knows that. That's why they've asked you to write, to talk. They've spoken to you and they've asked you for a proposal. So you have to have some sort of attention grabber right at the start. How can you hook them? For the big deals, that could be the front cover, something really that looks fantastic, that's got a really great active title that just makes me want to open the book and read it. The front cover of all the novels that you buy when you used to buy them, that would they've got interesting covers. They've got a title that kind of tells you what the story is going to be, right? The proposal should do the same. So you've got to grab the attention, and then what you think of the typical front end of a proposal. You would have some sort of management summary or executive summary, right, where you try and kind of grab them right at the start. For years, people have been talking about the structure of an executive summary or a management summary. There's kind of 4-box or 5-box techniques, and people don't know that sort of stuff, but it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And the start of those templates would start with talking about how you understand the customer, where they are today and where they need to get to, which is the story part of it. Yeah. But then if everybody's following that same recipe, that too is quite dull. I'm reading your proposal and you're telling me, well done, you can copy and paste from the RFP what my requirements are, which is not what you should be doing. And two, where somebody's put a bit of opinion around it but it's still the same stuff.
Yeah.
So if somebody at the third one there has nice headline at the top, we're going to deliver the value proposition, some kind of tangible business benefits or something just to hook them, just to get them to go, all right, of these three, I always think of it, there's some, however strict the process is, right, a human being is still evaluating it at the moment. If you're late reviewing the proposals that have been sent to you, you've got to make a decision tomorrow, you're presenting to the boss tomorrow, you've got the three on your desk, which one are you going to read first? You got one that's that thick, one that's one that, and you pick up the third one because it looks nice, so it's got a nice, it talks to me, it's got something catchy right at the start.
Yeah.
Read that one first, right? And then maybe you'll just check the price in the other ones and then work out whether you look at them or not, or whether you give it to that one. So you've got to grab that attention right from the start. It's essential. It's essential. So that's your order. Your order is, how do I grab the attention?
Yeah.
If I'm staying customer focused, how do I make sure I'm talking about the customer first? About my company bit, which I might think I still need to give them, guess where that is? That's right at the end.
Yeah.
If I put it in.
I think it just reminded me then of when you're scrolling through Netflix. You've got Netflix in front of you and they give you snappy previews of each one and you're scrolling, and I'm a nightmare for scrolling Netflix, looking through everything and then not finding something to watch. I'll spend half an hour scrolling, but the one thing that will grab me is the one that gives me the really quick preview. It's got a catchy cover on the top of it because you want to click it, you want to see what else is there.
Yeah.
That's, I suppose, leads me on quite well onto my next question. We, as an organisation, we have done phenomenally well recently from including videos within our proposals. I think one of the reasons being for the more catchy RFPs that we go, do you know what? We don't just want to win this. We want to own this proposal. We are going to put all our eggs in this basket and really go after this one. I think one of the things that has set us apart, and we've won a couple of RFPs off the back of this, was the fact that we stood in front of either a screen or we talked through the proposal. Very quick and very easy. But again, making that even easier to digest than even sometimes just reading it. I mean, what are your views on integrating video into proposals?
I mean, it's going to be part of the future. Videos and animations, bringing to life a solution, a complicated solution with a really nice, simple animation and a bit of a voiceover. Yeah. Fantastic. Injecting a bit of personality into the submission by, here's the team and here's the actual person who's going to be managing your account, talking about how excited they are about it and showing that they really know and understand you. I mean, that's amazing stuff. The challenge that we still have with doing that is how you get that content to the customer. And it is possible, and but it normally takes a little bit of work and working out how you're going to do that. But if you can do that, the results are fantastic. I mean, a lot of the statistics on LinkedIn, right, are people are engaging more with the video and the animation sort of style versus just the still sort of images or clever graphics. So, that is hugely going to be the future of the future of proposals, certainly. So I'm not surprised you've got great results with that. Anything where it's they're buying the people, the kind of couple of talking head shots that can work really well. And I'm thinking of one of my clients at the moment. During lockdown, in fact, we'd been helping them with creating sort of proactive proposals to help them nudge along their sales campaigns with their clients. Sometimes offering specific solutions, sometimes like points of view and ideas that they think would be relevant, just to try and move things along. Yeah. And we had this idea to maybe bring them to life a little bit more by having some video. So we actually created a shorter sort of proposal that they sent to their client or customer or prospect, but also a video with a kind of walkthrough of it, and it worked really nicely. They just used Zoom to record it, and a little bit of video and a little bit of editing on top of it. So it looked good. And then actually had some conversations. So that person was kind of talking to that person a little bit. So it was not just one person, it was a bit of a conversation and handing over, and a diagram would come up. Just worked really nicely, and shows, a lot of it is still about showing you want the business more than the other person.
Absolutely.
Right? Showing you're willing to go a little bit further. And you can do so much now, as we're all finding out from home, with recording video and things like that. It's not like you have to go to an expensive studio, buy a new suit and new gear and you're standing in front of a white screen, is it? People are well, you can look at me because I mean, you can, people are expecting people to just be kind of more normal, aren't they? So actually it's easier to do. So now hugely, it's going to be a big area just moving forwards into the very, very near future, where it just becomes the norm that people create videos just to personalize it on the people side, and then also animate solutions and complicated stuff that's easier to show rather than write down.
And I know exactly what you mean about actually getting that video across to somebody. I remember we were bidding for a tender for one of the Chamber of Commerce's, and the tender had come over and we put the bid in for it, and I sent a video alongside it, and we didn't score very well. I don't think they'd even watched it, to be honest. We'd have done it as an attachment on there, and I don't think they'd even watched it, to be honest. So it definitely only works on certain things. But I completely agree with you there. Getting a bit of your personality across, how you can really show that you want it more than someone else, I think has really put us ahead of some other companies when it's come to being on there. And I suppose that leads me on to a little bit to, obviously at the moment we are doing a lot more sales virtually. I mean, how are you guys helping people to tie that into the proposal part of the sales process when they're working more virtually? Have you seen a big shift there?
Yeah, we've seen, particularly at the start of lockdown, when maybe people weren't able to get in touch with their customers quite as easily. Nobody quite knew what was going on, and things kind of, the tumbleweed was going down the road outside your houses and stuff. At that point, some of the more proactive people that we work with started to then think about, right, handbrake on, let's think about which are our key target accounts, and actually let's think about how we can more proactively, because so many people are still reactive, right? How do we proactively go after those accounts? And then, maybe we'd help them on RFPs and tender responses before, and they didn't know we also do the more proactive stuff. They started to engage to say, listen, help us with, articulating the message we want to tell to this customer. And that's actually, my last little anecdote there with the video. That's exactly where that came from. That organization wanting to get on the front foot, sort of taking the opportunity to get a little bit more on the front foot with their customers. So it's the proactive kind of new business side of things, but also the retention side of things. I think there's been a lot of talk about, renewals and retentions being more important than ever at the moment, and it has been an area of weakness for a lot of organizations. A lot of investment in people to help on the new business side, the new logos and the kind of, we got that one. And then when it comes to the poor old account manager, they've got a tender in, and they're like, well, you kind of do it yourself. It's not.
We're busy getting new business. Just crack on with your tender. We're busy doing new business. I'm not bothered if it's for $500,000. We've got a 10 grand deal we're going to do.
Exactly. I was having a chat to somebody the other day who was an account manager. Yeah. And she said one of her clients, she had 200 accounts to manage. So I mean, it's like, that's a tough job, right? Tell me some of the insights about customer ABC, of course. So she's in a tough position anyway. But she received, client sent her an email. She received this email with this document attached to it, saying it was but you've been invited to a tender. She was like, she had no idea what that even was. She had to ask a boss, who then said, "Oh, sugar, the counts at risk, really." And then luckily she had some support internally to help her put it together. But if you were chasing that logo from a new business perspective, you'd be rubbing your hands together, wouldn't you? That the incumbent didn't even know what a tender was, let alone that the contract was coming up, and hadn't been doing anything to try and get into a good position to defend it. So we've had a lot of inquiries and for support to people to help try and get on the front foot to retain their client. Whether that's I know it's coming up for renewal in the next 6 months. We've just started to think about what our strategy is going to be moving forward. So to get ahead of the procurement process, or here's some, or instead of waiting for the tender, here's some new ideas we've had for it, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And by the way, here's the value that we've delivered, in case you've kind of forgotten all the times we've bailed you out. So that sort of thing has been on the increase as well, and that's been, from a selfish perspective, has been good during the lockdown, when the kind of more formal procurement stuff really was handbraked. Nothing was happening for a few months. I think now some organizations are seeing that handbrake being released, and actually all the tenders that were planned to come out are now starting to come out at once, particularly if it's the government. If they're the customer, we're seeing it getting really, really busy. So it's the renewal side of things, as well as the new business kind of proactive stuff that kicked off a lot.
And when companies are looking at that presentation, I mean, one thing that we sort of get asked quite a lot is for help with when we're doing a part of the reviewing process for their sales processes, looking at how they're actually presenting their solution. And I mean, for me, the best proposals ever are the ones that you've talked through with the client. You've said, I'll put that together. And rather than sending out the proposal, which is what we normally do, we click the send button and then we sit back and go, oh, brilliant, I've got it out. Right, I've done my job. How do you work with businesses and salespeople to help them with that, presenting the proposal, and how to actually put that in front of people, which will have the most meaningful impact and give them the best conversion rates?
I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, we've got more into the presentation of the proposal as part of the bid. I mean, most formal processes, and like before, most of our routes into getting into new areas have been through the formal stuff.
Sure.
So we've helped we might help an organization with the look and feel and branding of their bid, with the writing and authoring of some of it, some reviewing of the content, guidance, and maybe even getting more hands-on and managing the process for them. You do all of that, and then we do what you just did. We kind of sit back from the client, and then they go off and present it. And then we've got a great win rate with our clients, of course. Otherwise, we wouldn't be been doing it for so long. But occasionally, we were hearing we lost it or went wrong at the pitch or the presentation or the interview, and you're like, well, tell us what happened. And you start to listen to it, and you're like, oh dear, what did you present? Show us the slides. Oh, slide number 1, overview of our company. And you're like, oh no, we spent ages, remember, coming up with a brilliant story, and you've just used your standard sales stuff. Okay, that it's an exaggeration of it, but you know what I mean. So our engagements have been, right, how do we then tell verbally the story, and use whatever medium that is, slides or to people, other things to help support the telling of the story.
Absolutely.
So firstly was the visuals and stuff and the slides and making that work. Then it got into the scripting. So we can help make it look the same as the proposal. Look nice, tidy it up, format it well, but still not all the way there, is it? So you need to actually have a good script. So most people now we advise start with is think about the script, think about the words you're going to say. Once you've thought about the words you're going to say, then you can think about what you want to be coming up behind you or with you or supporting you to help emphasize the key points.
Absolutely.
And then you're into a position where you're probably going to be delivering a better pitch or presentation than the next person.
And I mean, for organisations, for any salespeople that are potentially listening, going, I hear exactly what you're saying. I think it's something we could look at. What sort of figures or in percentages, or however you best responding to it, but what sort of uplift in conversions can you get from looking at your proposal system? If anyone's thinking, should I do this, should I not? What sort of uplift can you get in those?
I mean, it can make a big difference. If I think back, I had a really nice opportunity to work very, very closely with a client a couple of years ago, and they were in the pension space. So very, very technical, really brilliant people who knew everything about investment and pensions and all that, and I really didn't have much of a clue in that space, but they had to write proposals. They have to bid for work, and their proposals just weren't particularly strong. So I ended up, our usual sort of engagement would be we go in and have a look at how it all works, do a bit of a sort of an MOT, and then give some advice and recommendations. And some of those things they can go and do, and some of those things they might ask us for some help on. So we were kind of midway through this process, and then there was a kind of change in management, and the guy who was running sort of business development, marketing, and the bid team just said, listen, can you just come in and actually do all the things you said we should do, but actually manage the team and help us do it. So it became like an interim role, which was great, because I could make sure that we actually delivered on all the things I said they needed. And those guys had those two big sort of successes out of that. So they trebled their win rate. So I mean, clearly they weren't on an 80% win rate before we started. It was pretty low. It was 1 in 6, 1 in 5 sort of level. Averaging across retention and new business, so pretty low. Definitely could do better. But also then by putting in, and you mentioned it earlier, some tools and processes, and becoming a bit harsher on what was being chased and pursued as well. They actually managed to halve the cost of their bids, and there's a lot of sort of highly paid people who would contribute to the bids. So they would work out based on their hourly charge out rates, every hour that was being charged against the bid, what that could add up to. And quite quickly, by making their lives a bit easier and doing a bit more for them and getting them to focus on their real area of specialism, could reduce the kind of cost there. So I mean, it can make a huge difference like that.
I think that the bit, I'm sure everybody else who was listening to that story there will have taken different things, but the one thing I was thinking for was how brilliant for those salespeople. You've been hammering away, winning 1 in 8 bids. There's so much labour going in. We talked about it before. People get into sales because they want to be winners. They want to win. And winning 1 times out of 8, it must be so disheartening. I'm guessing that must be brilliant for you to sit back after a project like that and have all these people that are now succeeding and doing really well because you've made those changes in the business.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, we're often enabling people and helping people and supporting people. We're not on the front line. We don't go and see our customers, clients. We don't have that bit. We are one step behind it. But when you actually get to really manage it all the way through and see the results, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. So no, I love that job.
Well, Graham, listen, I'm very conscious of your time. I've took up probably about 35, 40 minutes of your time there. I have took so much from that. So a massive, massive thank you for coming on. Just in case anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Just drop me an email, ga@strategicproposals.com, or come visit our website, strategicproposals.com, and drop me a line.
Wonderful. And very final question. I always like to ask people, Graham, if it's all right. If you could go back and give yourself at the very start of your career in the sales industry, one piece of advice that would help you skyrocket to where you are now quicker, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh, gosh. It's a very, very, very good question. I think it's about picking the right battles, because quite often you can see there are lots of different things that could be done to change things, but you have to get people involved and persuade people to change. And I think it's making sure you pick the right battle, because if you pick the wrong ones, you could spend a lot of time and effort getting something that's not gonna get you the results. So in kind of bidding, the quickest way to get a better win rate is to get really harsh on your qualification. Okay, most people know that you're working on a bid.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I just can't see how we're going to win this. And that's the time when it should be. This is the time where you should put your hand up and just go, listen, folks, I don't think we're going to win this. Whereas at the start of my career, you're probably working with a lot more senior people who seem to know what they're doing a lot more than you. And sometimes you kind of think, well, they might be right. The head of the division or the head of the whatever. They might be right, but actually, experience shows me that people value it. If you say, listen, honestly, I don't know why it's happened, but I know you really want to win this business, but I just cannot see why the customer is gonna pick you. So let's just think, if we didn't do this one and spent the effort we're going to save on that one I think could be won if we put extra effort on it. And it's just picking that right battle and focusing on the area that's going to make the difference. I think that would be that's what I'd be telling myself.
Absolutely. Phenomenal response there. I thought you were going to say, get better at your proposals, guys. It's an obvious one. You need to get better at proposals.
That as well.
I need to get better at proposals. But really, really good piece of advice. I completely agree. Time is the only thing that we've got and where you use it. Graham, massive thank you for coming on today. Huge thank you. Guys, I hope you've all taken as much from that as I have. I've got 2 pages of notes here that I took from that. So Graham, big thank you for that. So some really key things. Make your proposals more about the client than they are about you. Think about the order that you're putting those proposals forward. And if it's something that you really, really want to win and really want to get behind, see if you can put a video in there as well. So I will call it a day with there, Graham, but a massive thank you for coming on. And guys, a big thank you for tuning into the Sales Geek podcast.
Thank you.